Awesome. Okay, guys. Yeah, let's get started.
That was a reminder that we're gonna be doing
Oh,
Thursdays,
good.
starting May 2nd.
Yeah, you should have spoke up. So reminder.
Yeah, just a reminder that we're gonna start doing our mastermind and then lunch and learns on Thursdays, starting in May.
Starting the first week of May, and that's May 2nd, right?
Yeah.
Is it Thursday?
May 2nd, the first Thursday.
Yeah, so we'll try and keep reminding you that. We'll send something out. Did we put something in the Facebook group too? Yeah, let's put something in the Facebook group too. So it's gonna be back to back. Hopefully you guys can make it, just consolidating on one day instead of two. And we're making some other changes as well, just consolidating again, the time involved to do these things. Like Ashley does a lot of coordination between the presenter and the lunch sponsor and this and that. We're actually moving towards having all of the presenters sponsor their own presentation. And that's just, more pertinent for us here in person. But it's just one less person to track down and get stuff from so she can do our registration pages. So anyway, Thursday, starting May 2nd.
On May 2nd, I will try to be there, but I will be in Atlanta with my son just before I go down from Atlanta down to Orlando. But I will try to be there, and I'll be on West Coast or East Coast time frame then. So I'll just have to put it on my calendar.
No worries.
Which I always
That's
do.
just the 1 week though, right?
What's that?
That's just the 1 week though.
Well, I'm actually leaving on the 24th, so I will miss 24th. I'm traveling that day to go to Atlanta for about a week and a half to spend with Ryan. And then May 5th, I fly to Orlando for Bill Pipes's Sales Power. So
Okay.
And that's until the 5th through the 8th. And I fly back to Atlanta on Wednesday, the 8th that night. So I'll be in classes of Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of that week. So with him. Excited. Very excited. So
Cool. I know you love your Bill.
I do. And that's kind of what I'm going to talk about today.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll get to that at the end. Kathy's going to be sharing our closing thoughts today. So thanks for doing that, Kathy. But to start off with, we have the one and only Eric Jones bringing us back to his thoughts from last week. Can you hear us, Eric?
I hear you great. How you guys doing?
Fantastic.
Very nice. All right. Yeah, so man, I really loved this and thought about it all week. We talked a little bit about David Goggins and his story and his book. If you haven't started reading that, it's You Can't Hurt Me. I love it. I finished it a long time ago. What, 4 weeks ago now? But it was the second time through that I had read it. But what I love about it is even though I'm reading other things, I still think about this a lot. I guess it had a strong impact on just staying mentally strong and really having making your goals visual and seeing things the way they're going to be and not just the way they are right now and making them real. So first, I just thought I'd ask if anyone had any thoughts over this last week, if they thought about it, if they kind of looked themselves in the mirror a little bit, the one person you can't lie to, and the self-talk and visualization being your keys to success. Anybody have any thoughts on that before I kind of wrap it up?
Don, you got to be visualizing your bike ride.
What was the name of,
How many miles is that?
book again?
About 2,300.
What was the name of his book?
You Can't Hurt Me.
No, you can't. You can try, but you will fail.
I think it's interesting. I've read that book before, is that it's an example of you can have, I wouldn't say his self-talk is negative, but his upbringing was pretty rough. And so he approaches some self-talk from an aspect of, from what I remember, kind of battling those early demons where I don't necessarily do it that way. Maybe sometimes I do, but you really can approach it from whatever way works for you. So I've heard other people say they'll utilize like people crap talking or anger and different things to help them propel ahead. So it's not just positivity that you put out there as far as motivation. I think that self-talk is more helpful if it is encouraging or countering whatever negative behavior or negative things you've encountered in life. But it's just an interesting perspective, because when I first started doing it, I'll always try to approach it from the positive side. I might try to approach it from the negative. We'll see, but I don't necessarily experience that as much as I used to. But the point of that is just try something that works, and then that'll potentially morph over time.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
His it's interesting, his self-talk. It is positive in the way that he is so focused on what he needs to get done and his goals. But it reminds me a little bit of Rich Dad Poor Dad too, kind of a little bit of the philosophy of David Goggins had such a hard upbringing that without that upbringing, he would probably not have achieved what he had. So it molded him into being either a really strong person, or he could have, just given up and said, hey, this is who I am and how I was raised, so woe is me. He decided to fight through it and really prove to himself that no matter what your upbringing is or your education level, or you can achieve anything if you have the proper mindset and determination. So yeah,
The decision is given to everybody at some point, and I like that you made that distinction from him, as he had a shitty upbringing, and so do other people. Some people use it as an excuse or justification for why they are the way they are, and he used it as a motivator and say, I'm not going to be like this my whole life, or I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to succeed in spite of that. And one thing I noticed this week, Eric, to your question on the self-talk, wasn't necessarily mine, but paying attention to other people. It's interesting, the people in your lives that talk about the past, and then the people that talk about what they're currently doing, and then you get around other people and talk about what they're going to do, right? And that's where the visualization comes in. And Lynn's not here for me to ask permission, but I'll just use her brother as an example. He's always talking about his shortcomings and justifying them based on the things that he's experienced through his life, and that's all he ever talks about. And what we're noticing lately is he's got 2 daughters here that have moved to Utah that are living with him. And when Brian got a divorce, their stepdad, he's just a narcissist. He's just a bad dude, and their family life didn't get better. I'll just say that. And he's really influenced them in a negative way. And they're here because they left home trying to get away from that. And he keeps bringing it up. Every time we're together, he's bringing up what they left behind and just beating it to death. And they don't need that. They need to get away from that. They need to, the self-talk needs to change. And it's like, I'm not, a victim of that. I can overcome that. And it's just interesting how that's his comfort zone of conversation, is the past and the bad things that have happened. And let's just bring it up every time we're together. It's like so depressing. So that's important too, is like the self-talk. Well, the talk of others that can affect your energy and what you focus on and stuff. Sometimes you have to distance ourselves from people.
Jeff, that's a great example. I won't mention any names, but I have 3 friends that we all had the exact same thing happen to us in a company. And one of them still talks about it 15 years later, about how negative and how things could have been better, and how different our lives would have been if there was better ownership and management in place financially. And my other friend that was also in that situation, we actually have talked to him about it and said, look, it's time to create a new story. It's gone. It's over. There's nothing we can do about it. There's lots of what ifs in life, but you have to focus on what can I do next? What is relevant now? And I think it's really easy for a lot of people to think about the past, and we can all do that. Say, man, if I just would have done this, or if this would have been different, if this decision that I made, which was a good one, would have would have worked out better, then how much different things would be. And it's really it's useless other than the fact that you learn from mistakes, but going back and thinking about how things could be different is really, it's really useless. So create a new story. That was kind of the intervention we had with our other friend, is the two of us went in and said, okay, what are we going to tell him? What are we going to talk about? It's like, let's create a new story so you can get rid of that one. But kind of interesting.
And I'm guessing that's not the first time you've had that conversation with him.
No, definitely not. But
I think,
yeah,
yeah, he come to Utah, Goggins, this week.
Yeah, there's the Limitless Arena thing going on. Yep,
So I saw a billboard that he was coming.
yeah, yep, it's a big event. There's probably 20 different speakers and stuff.
But even David Goggins is on to a new adventure. I think he's becoming a paramedic or something. But he talked about
Currently.
yeah, and I think he talked about trying to learn all the different words because he said he has a hard time memorizing and stuff like that. So the challenge that now that he has is trying to be this paramedic.
Interesting. He's always looking for a new challenge.
Yeah, so that's his new challenge.
Super cool.
well, guys, I'll wrap this up. I said I was going to share a story that I really enjoyed, and I think I mentioned this last week, but if you listen to the audio version on Audible of Can't Hurt Me, there's actually more material than there is when you read the book. And this story, I'm 99% sure, was not in the book that he shared. But if you haven't listened to it, I highly encourage it. Put it at the top of your list, because it's definitely one of my favorites over the past few years. But just to give you a little background, and this won't ruin it if you haven't listen to it. But David Goggins is the only person to have completed both the Navy SEALs training and the Army Ranger School, and the Air Force Tactical Air Command Training, or Air Control Training, I think it is. No one's ever done that before. All three, and they're all similar in the difficulty level. Like, you know what it is to become a SEAL. It's the best of the best. That's exactly what Ranger School is in the Army, same as in Navy SEAls. So very, very difficult. And obviously, if someone finishes one of those, that's a massive accomplishment in life. Who would be crazy enough to go after a couple more? And he's done it. But he's also run 100 miles in 19 hours. He's run 135 miles in less than 26 hours. And he's done over 4,000 pull-ups in 24 hours, which is a Guinness World Record. I mean, it just incredible amount of energy and determination. But the story that I think was not in the book is a story about after one of these competitions, and I think it was one of the 70-mile trail runs. He actually had fractures in both of his legs, like in his fibia, they had fractures in. The doctor said he had to be off his feet for at least 2 months. So he went to a Vegas marathon with his wife and his mom, and he just went there and brought snacks and bananas, and he was there to support him as he's recovering from these injuries. But obviously he couldn't run in it, so he's just there to support. And he's out there at the beginning with his wife and his mom, with his care packet for them, and the gun goes off, and something triggers in Goggins' mind, and he just starts running. He could not help himself when he heard that gun go. He said, I have to go, I have to compete. And he actually ran the whole 26 miles. He said the first 2 miles were incredibly painful. And then it started to go away with the adrenaline, hit a wall later, but he finished the race, 26 miles, and actually qualified with his time for the Boston Marathon with 2 broken legs. And then he sat and waited for his mom and his wife to finish the race. And he said the look on their faces when the gun went off and he started running and pulling away from the two of them was just sheer terror and shock. I was like, what are you doing? So I just when you're up against something and you're thinking, man, how am I going to do this? And man, this is painful emotionally or physically. You know, I just kind of I'm thinking back of that. It's like, man, this is nothing. This is nothing compared to what other people have achieved with a massive mindset. So that's what I'll leave you with. I thought that was it's a crazy story, and maybe it doesn't apply exactly to every one of us in life, but it definitely shows that what you can do mentally, you can really do some amazing things in your life when everyone else would think it's impossible.
You know, extreme examples like this are pretty helpful for all of us if we pay attention to them, because sometimes we think we have things difficult. You know, we've talked about discipline and mindset and making yourself uncomfortable. I mean, he's like the supreme example of that, like making yourself uncomfortable on purpose. Imagine just the self-discipline that takes and the growth that comes from that. I mean, he didn't do it just to like for no reason. He was pushing his limits. So that's how he grows in a very extreme fashion. And so all of us are like, you know, 1,000% of that type of effort or whatever. But in doing those things that are hard, doing an East Coast bike ride thing, and you've also gone east to west across the country. I mean, those are extreme things too, but you're challenging yourself. And so in our business and in our personal life, I think that, I mean, what a great choice of topic conversation, Eric, because that's important.
My only negative about David is he swears too much.
Yeah, it's just expressive. I mean, some people, that's just the way they talk. I remember Gary Vee says drops the F-bomb all the time too. And somebody like, I remember asked him once and it was on camera and she said, why do you have to swear all the time? And he's just like, I'm just being me. This is just the way I talk. I'm not purposely trying to do anything. I grew up, you know, in this environment, and it's just a word of expression to me. It has no meaning behind it. Don't label it, whatever. And yeah, so it is what it is.
It is. If you listen to him, you're gonna hear some swearing.
Yeah.
That's
It's
kind of a funny, that's kind of a funny thing also with Bill Pipes, because he was always F this and F that too. And he's really, really toned it down. I don't know if somebody has said something to him about that, but he's really toned it down a lot. Now he'll just say F this or something like that if that's what he's wanting to say, but not actually saying the word or something like that. So it's just kind of funny to see the transition for him too.
Yeah, to me, it just kind of goes to where the current society's going. Everybody gets offended by something. I mean, it is what it is. Yeah.
He's moved to Utah. Frick, fetch, fudge.
Right.
Mormons can swear without really swearing.
The fun, yeah, that's the funny thing.
Yeah.
They make up a
What's
new
your
word
intent?
for it. It's like,
What is your intent?
kind of means the same thing in your circles. Okay, I want to get to your guys' thoughts and your wins and your challenges and stuff, but before I turn it over to you guys, I just wanted to mention some things from our state meeting this morning that they talked about. It's relative to the whole NAR. Was anybody on Utah State meeting today? Shayna, James? James was, okay, good.
I was.
Awesome, you guys can chime in as well. And Nathan and Kathy in Washington and Oregon, you guys have something similar going on. So you can kind of like look up any forms that they make coming out with. EXP's coming out with forms to kind of like help us through this new ruling and requirements and stuff. We've been pretty compliant here in Utah with our existing listing agreement and stuff like that. But the new things that's really relevant is you cannot open a door for somebody if you don't have a signed agreement. So some of the forms that we have, you guys in Utah can pull these up. We have a single property compensation agreement, an agency disclosure, like you can sign with somebody. I'm going to go show you this house, but first, because of compliance and the new things that are going on in the real estate industry, I need to send you over this form because I cannot show it to you unless we have this agreement in place. And it's an agreement for compensation. So negotiate that however you will on what you're charging. Somebody might say, well, I'm not paying that or whatever. And you've got this is somebody you're just meeting, right? You don't even have a relationship with them, possibly they're just an internet lead or whatever, and they want to go see a property. So keep that in mind, that you have to have something in writing before you even open a door. And to the extension of that, sometimes we as busy agents have somebody else go open doors for us. So if we have an agency agreement with that person and then we're busy and we're out of town until July, you know, unless when this ruling becomes official and stuff like that, we can still do it. But the technicality is you can't have somebody else go open the door for them either if the agency agreement's with you.
So Jeff, this one property thing is in lieu of the full buyer broker agency.
No, there's both. That's why I want to bring this up. This is a single property
But if you have.
only.
But if you.
But there's also the buyer broker agency agreement, like, so the way Kristen was explaining it to us, like, hey, if you're just going on a first date, you don't know if there's gonna be a second date, you might use this one. If they're your client, your
But if you have that
referral, your
one,
friend,
you don't
this,
need
you
that.
don't need that, because this
Right.
covers everything
Okay.
for the extended period of time. The exclusive buyer broker agreement is agreeing to pay a fee up until this amount for any property that they buy or obtain interest in, just like before. But they've changed, you know, some of the wording on it. Because one thing that's important is we cannot increase our fee once we have something like this done. So consider this, you've got an agreement for 2% on your buyer broker agreement, and the listing agent is offering 3%. You're not supposed to increase the amount of compensation that you're obtaining from your buyer for what you've agreed on. So, and this is something that we've always done. We always do 3% with the option to reduce it if we can help put that deal together, or if the compensation was only 2%. Lynn and I, our policy has always been to accept what the listing agent has offer, but now they're not necessarily going to be offering anything. So it's going to be whatever you can negotiate, right? And so another interesting thing that a lot of agents didn't know about on there is we've always had an addendum since 2019 to negotiate our commission in the rep seat as part of the offer. There's a clause that says it's labeled seller's payment to buyer's real estate brokerage. Seller agrees to pay X dollar or percent of the purchase price to buyer's brokerage. This payment shall be made in addition to any other compensation offered by the seller's brokerage to buyer's brokerage. The provisions of this addendum survive closing. So why do you think it says in addition to any other compensation offered? Anybody got a comment on that or for explanation? So for example, let's say that the seller is only offering 1%, but you have a buyer broker agreement for 3%. You need to go negotiate that gap. They're already offering 1%, but you want 3% with the seller, which can be part of the offer. This is not a new form. This is not a new clause. This has been in, at least here in Utah, this has been part of our form since April of 2019.
But you can negotiate anything in between that too. It can be 3 from 1 to 3.
Exactly. So this is just in addition to any offering that they have, right?
But now that
Form is, what's the name of that form, Jeff?
It is real estate brokerage payment addendum. So just search brokerage
If you have that
or
one
payment.
for 3, and let your agency agreement, your buyer broker exclusive, if that's 3, you can still negotiate 2, 2.5, right?
You just
On
can't
that
negotiate
form.
more.
Right, you can, well, you can go, yeah, you can negotiate down. Now we're talking about 2 different forms. So the buyer broker agreement, if it says 2, you can't negotiate 3 because you went into showing properties with a 2. So if you start higher, you can always drop it down, make the deal work or whatever.
For example, if yours was the buyer broker agreement was 3 with your client,
Mhm.
a seller was offering 1, you could then go in and negotiate for 2, and everything would be.
2 additional.
Yeah.
Because this is in addition to what they're already offering.
don't you have to get that in writing somewhere in the contract though, that they were offering that initial 1%?
Well, right, so there's the example, if they're like offering 1%, let's say that is in writing, or then it would be 2, right, if you're trying to get to 3. If they're not offering anything, then in addition to anything offered, if they're offering 0,
You're
that would be, yeah. And you can make that actually part of the
So is the message then, I guess, with your seller? I mean, your client, if you're on the buy side. Do you have to more explicitly explain to them that if the seller does not or will not pay for that piece of the commission, that they are responsible for that, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
always been true, but now it's almost like you have to be very explicit about it, right?
It's always been true, and it kind of negates the comment that we would always make is if they're offering less than 3, that's all we're gonna charge. Sometimes they even ask me to put that in writing as an addendum to my buyer broker agency agreement. 99% of the time, they just say, cool, and we reduce our commission at closing with whatever they're offering, and I never even have an addendum. I think it's happened twice in however many years. And it's like, sure, no problem, I'll do an addendum and state that, because the buyer broker agreement says that they are on the hook for any shortage that's not offered on the MLS. Now, they can't even offer it on the MLS. So
Let's go to the extreme example. Let's say you've got a buyer broker in place with your buyer for 3%. The seller, the listing agent, is offering 0. You go to them to negotiate and they say, no, we're not paying anything. They're still at 0. You can't get them off of that. If your client still wants to buy that house, then the answer is your buyer is paying you through the 3%, correct?
Right. So well, it'll be interesting to see the things that change, right? Because there's certain loan qualifications where with Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, if you're putting less than 10% down, you can't get more than 3% seller concessions in the contract.
Right.
And normally they're using that for their closing costs, for their loan funding, not for your commission. So there may be moving down the road lenders that offer to cover that, like FHA, it's already a thing. They roll commissions into that. Right, on Utah housing, you can borrow, what is it, Eric, 102, 103% of the purchase price.
Yeah,
So there is funding provisions in some loans for compensation, but not all. Eric?
yeah, that's correct. 3%.
Yeah.
What's the so as if I understand it correctly, the dating form, the one showing, that's not a lock in the buyer at all. That's just not like a buyer agreement.
No, it's literally titled a single party compensation agreement. It's for a property. I haven't read through this. I just printed them out so I could go through them in more detail as Kristen was explaining them. So this one actually, oh, that's just came out March 3rd. No, that's wrong. This one's March 3rd of 2016. So maybe it's just pointing out that we've always had this one too. I've never used it. This is just for
So you either need to get a buyer's agreement or a single party compensation before you show any house.
And
right.
And Jeff, this is
in July.
If you're going by the letter of the law, you're saying, yes, we have to do this, but how would they know? How would they police that? Like if I took a client out, showed them a house, I didn't have that in place. What happens?
Well, they may not know, but I don't know the answer 100%, but there may be some requirements for sky slope that whenever you show properties, you have to upload these in there just for showing. It's much less if you're under contract or not. I haven't heard any talk around that subject. Maybe some of you guys have, but that goes to a lot of things, right? I mean, just down to the code of ethics. It's like, if you're making a decision based on whether or not you're gonna get caught or not, then that's probably the wrong premise for doing anything.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the enforcement mechanism, if it's just, bureaucracy and paperwork and just, how it all works.
Yeah. There's probably gonna be some sort of audit function for the brokerages where they're gonna have to submit certain things, or maybe once you go under contract, you have to submit this with your under contract paperwork showing that you had this in place prior to writing up your offer when you showed them the property. I'm not sure how that's gonna play out.
Have a time
Yeah.
stamped and everything.
Well, it'll be signed and dated, so it'll have the date on there, yeah.
So I think the issue there, Terry, is like, let's say today's April 15th, you write an offer, you go under contract on April 15th and you realize I don't have a buyer's agreement. So you send over the buyer's agreement on April 17th, the buyer signs it. Then you didn't have a single party compensation agreement, right? and you didn't have the buyer's agreement. So technically you'd be out of compliance. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but and then on the single party agreement, this will kind of put a kink in the procuring cause as well. Because if you said, hey, I showed that house first, I had procuring cause, and then some other agent sold it, I'm entitled to that commission. That may change. As well, where's your single party compensation agreement? Because you're supposed to sign that before you show them any house anyway.
Yep. So here's another thing I thought of as she was explaining these two forms. One, she's referring to as dating, one's marrying. What if somebody calls on a house, but they're saying, hey, while we're out, there's actually 4 properties I want to go see.
Yeah.
So to me, the simplest and easy way to do that would be to use the exclusive buyer broker agreement, because one of the most important things on there is the expiration date. So if it states any and all properties that you show them or are a party to introducing them to during this agreement, they owe you a compensation. So why not do this for the weekend? If you're gonna go out and show them a bunch of properties, and if you don't put in an offer on one of those, it expires on Monday.
Yeah.
That's another workaround, so you're not doing one for each additional property.
Another thing that they said, Jeff, on the single property is there's a space at the bottom that you can actually put multiple addresses, I think, in the additional comments. Is that correct? Or someone was doing,
There's probably the addendum too.
yeah,
Yep.
so that might not be a bad idea. I mean, that's kind of old school, but like actually having a hard copy with you in the car, of that document, and then you just write in the addresses that you're seeing, and if it's a new one, and then that way you have coverage there too, and they sign it on the spot.
But hopefully that's the exception, because I mean, I would think that if you're working with somebody that you would want them, and they would want you to be their agent, as opposed to showing one property, we're done,
Well, the circumstance where that might happen is those people that pay for Zillow leads and they do internet marketing, they don't know this person at all. They're just like, hey, I saw this listing online,
I
can you
see.
show it to me? And you've never met, you have no relationship whatsoever.
Well,
You still can't just run out and show them the property,
right.
so you can build the relationship without having something in place.
Well, maybe then that's the onus is on us to do a better job qualifying. I mean, I don't know that I would do that anyway. Somebody calls me up, I don't know, from Adam, hey, go show me this house.
Right, some people make sure they're pre-qualified, I've talked to their lender.
Yeah,
Make sure they
I
can
mean,
actually buy what you're showing them.
Oh, it's down in, it's up in Syracuse, or, someplace that's like 2 hours away. It's like, yeah, right, I'm gonna go do that. Are you kidding me?
So Shane, I like that idea. The addendum could say something like, this addendum shall include any and all of the listed properties below on the same terms as outlined in the single property compensation agreement. And then just write down the addresses. I think that would totally work.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, first of all, Terry, if anyone's needing to look at houses in Syracuse, call us, because we're right there. And then also,
referral agreement.
Syracuse is up above Ogden, right? North of Ogden, is that right? I was just trying to think someplace that was far away.
That you wouldn't
from me,
want to
right?
go.
Santa Quinn or,
one other thing that I wanted to ask that I asked in the team meeting, they didn't get to it, but they talked about showing houses. We can no longer have other people show houses for us. So what would be the best way to handle that if you're out of town and your clients need to look at houses? How does that work? My understanding is with a buyer broker agreement, if we're all with EXP, it's with the brokerage is the agreement. So I don't see why we couldn't have another EXP agent show for us, but they would have to somehow be listed in the buyer broker agreement, or, or maybe it's a single, I don't know if they could do the single property.
So you're correct, Shayna, that they're hiring the brokerage, but if you look at the way the form's written, this single property compensation agreement is entered into on this date by and between blank seller and blank company, and then it says including blank as the authorized agent for the company.
This one doesn't, the buyer broker doesn't have.
All right, she's talking.
Well, the single use may not be the option, but I'm just asking, what is our option if we're out of town and we have clients who need to look at a home, and James and I are both out of town? who are we calling to get our clients into the property? Or is it a SOL? I can't, you miss out on that property. I don't think that's right. So how would you go about it to protect?
Yeah, I don't think that's right either.
Jeff, why do we have the ability to modify those forms, or are those?
So an addendum, or you can modify an
So I'm
addendum.
gonna say, why couldn't you just say, or any, or if, what's that, if registered agent is unavailable, a substitute agent can be, called upon.
Yeah.
What if you just put that language in to Shane, to your question, what if you put that language, that one sentence clause into an addendum and just made that part of your buyer broker every time you had somebody sign it, then you'd be covered.
That's possible, I think. I'm just kind of thinking through this. I mean, because this is a compensation agreement for the broker. The broker's paying you as an independent contractor. So possibly you could.
But the language wouldn't be specific to compensation. It would be specific to just allowing somebody to show a house in your absence with the same brokerage. That's how I'm thinking.
No, I understand what you're saying, but I guess the ruling is that there has to be an agreement for compensation in place before you show a property, so I'm just kind of thinking this through. Anybody else have a comment on?
I think another interesting thing is like in mine and Shayna's case, because we are a team, we just have her Sky Slope and she signs everything. And so I guess my name is on there also as far as agents at the top of the contracts and stuff, but she's the only one that signs. So maybe you could put additional people's names in that if you had like a dedicated showing agent or something.
Just never go on vacation.
Or if you have somebody that you have an agreement with that is covering for you out of town, and vice versa, like I know Eric, you used to do stuff with Jesse a lot, right? So maybe if you have that agreement with somebody right from the get-go, you just include that additional name in there. Because sometimes I put Jeff and or Lynn Marchant, and we run everything through Lynn's Sky Slope, just like you guys do. So it's possible maybe you could name your showing agent right from the get-go.
Yeah, I guess you'd want to differentiate that they're not getting part of the commission though. I mean, you can pay them whatever their showing fee is or whatever, but they're not really entitled to whatever a major portion of it.
Well, when you have a showing agent show for you, if you do, I mean, because you got the two of you, do you offer them compensation anyway? Because that should be paid through the brokerage.
Yeah, not anymore. No, not directly.
Mm-hmm.
But
so I guess it would come down to.
Sorry, I was saying we
Go ahead,
could
Jen.
take them though through our commission, right? Like when we finalize our Sky Slope form, we can put in there that, I want to pay Ashley Taylor $50 of my commission for showing properties during this transaction or something. Like I can do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can do that. Well, you do that in Sky Slope. So the rep C is going to dictate the agent of record when you write up the offer or whatever, and then you submit it to Sky Slope. You have your percentage differentiation if there was a co-listing agent or a co-buyer's agent or whatever there. Like sometimes even when I do work a buyer, or I have a listing of a personal contact of mine, I put it in Sky Slope. Lynn's always listed as the co-agent on all of our stuff. But since we run everything transaction-wise for bookkeeping purposes through her, when I separate the commissions out, even though I did the bulk of the work and I'm on the contract and everything like that, the disbursement says 0% to Jeff, 100% to Lynn. So I get no compensation from EXP, but I'm legally able to do the work.
So yeah, it's probably just a matter of putting maybe a couple names down of people who might show. That's the tricky part, is you just don't know who's available either. So that's a question I want to further explore with our brokers. But the other thing I wanted to ask, or at least have in discussion, is we talk about the listing agreement. Let's say, traditionally, I'm not going to say, whatever, but it was 6%. Traditionally, like if you think about the MLS, putting it on the MLS statistically, that's the word, statistically, they're gonna make 6% or more than they would listing for sale by owner, correct? And so, my question is if we are reducing or we're going about it differently as far as like the seller is now only paying the listing agent 3% and they're offering 0 for the buyer's agent commission. When we as listing agents go and talk about their home value and what we want to list it for as far as data goes, appraisers are looking at MLS data. How does that change how we value properties? Does that make sense? What I'm
The
asking?
question makes sense. The answer is, I don't know. Moving forward, I'm not sure how, because there's never been a concession or an adjustment on an appraisal for compensation anyway, right? So if you're putting in an offer on a for sale by owner property and you negotiate 2% for yourself, and they're not paying a listing agent, the total commission is 2%. Some of those comps might have been listed on the MLS and been offering a 6 or a 7 or a 5 or whatever. There's never an adjustment like that for the commission. Although they do have a concession adjustment, they show the concessions, but it's typically for closing costs and what was allowable to be credited to the buyer's sheet at closing. So it'll be interesting. I don't know how that's going to play out. I don't know if that's now going to become an adjustment on the appraisals. But lenders have always accepted that, hey, that's a cost in there, but they've never really compared apples to apples. A 0 commission to a 6% commission, that can be pretty substantial on $1 million property, right? But there's been no adjustment on the appraisals beforehand, so I'm not sure how that's going to play out.
It's just like it was said today in the broker meeting, like the buyer's agent compensation typically is paid through the purchase price, right? Like that's how, I mean, you have your agreement, but if they're offering a commission, it's all factored in. And so when you have, let's see, I'm trying to think of my thoughts here. Oh, so yeah, so like, let's say they're offering 0 buyer broker commission, and you want your clients are like, well, I want to add 3% to the purchase price and, factor it into my loan kind of thing. That's really no different than what's been happening. Just it hasn't been vocalized or clear
Right.
as, and so anyway, so it is going to be interesting to see what happens as far as like, are appraisers going to take that into account? Is it going to appraise at that 3% higher offer to be able to have them finance their commission and to pay their agent? Or is it going to be an issue with the lender? You know what I mean? So there's lots of different things. I'm just curious as far as like, what's the point of putting things on the MLS? What differentiates the MLS listings versus for sale by owners? And the whole point is to get greater exposure and higher, possibility of competition and things like that. So anyway, it's just interesting to talk about and think about how can we handle our business and valuing our properties.
Yeah.
And it makes sense to the sellers.
NAR screwed up on this. Years ago, they should have just agreed that it was optional to put your commission agreement on there, but they made it mandatory. It was required that you had to offer some sort of compensation. And that's what the whole stink was, because now it's like you're forcing the seller to pay a commission by putting it on the MLS. If they would have just made it an option, or you can put it on there, or you don't have to put it on there and let the agents figure it out, then most of this wouldn't have even happened. So look at it this way, guys. I've always had the conversation with sellers and buyers that it's really a matter of perspective on who's even paying the commission, because when you're talking to a seller, they're going to net less based on the gross purchase price. They're looking only at their bottom line. What fees are involved in there? Where's that going out of from what the buyer is willing to pay? Because I'm not getting 100% of that. So where's it going? So when they're accepting an offer, they're accepting what they're going to net. It doesn't matter if there's a 10% or 20% commission in there, if they're happy with the net that they're getting, right? On the buyer's side, you're talking to the buyer, says, dude, you're paying for it. It's wrapped right into your purchase price. You're paying $1 million, and there's you're paying the listing agent's commission. You're the ones bringing the money to the table, right? So you can argue it both ways on who's paying for it because the seller doesn't get it. So the argument could be, well, the buyer's the one bringing it all to the table for both sides, right? So it's just the narrative that you're having. I mean, nothing really is changing when it comes to that. It's just like, where's it coming from? So the ones that are gonna get hurt the worst are those that have, they're squeaking by with their minimum required down payment. And they have to get seller concessions for their closing costs, or they simply can't buy a house. But those buyers that are putting 10, 20, 30% down on their property, it's very likely that the commission is just part of their purchasing expense. And they're gonna offer the maximum purchase price, knowing that going into it, that a portion of that's gonna go towards the commissions, right? And the seller's still gonna look at the offer the same way and say, well, okay, this is what they're offering me, but what do I get? What am I walking away with after this closing? The fact that they're paying their buyer's agent out of that purchase price has nothing to do with the seller. Right? It could be 1%, it could be 5% they're paying to their buyer. They're just bringing all that money to the table to cover those expenses. And so the seller's looking at the net and the buyer's looking at the gross, and it's always been that way.
I think one important differentiation is Shane had mentioned that comparing if you were like to do a for sale by owner compared to putting it on the MLS, the difference isn't 6%, it's 16%. So it's just not the commissions because there's a whole bunch more things on there. We put a house on KSL. I put it on KSL and on the MLS at the same time. I probably got a couple hundred views in maybe 1 or 2 days on KSL. I had thousands and thousands of views on the MLS. So the difference is, I mean, that difference really comes into not just the 6% what was negotiated, but also down to the agent as far as negotiation, because these people do this maybe 1 or 2 times, or I don't know, maybe 4 times in their life. They don't know all the concessions, what you can get away with, the negotiation and all that stuff. So the value just isn't the agreed upon 6%. That for sale by owners lose a lot. And only 10% of them sell their house from that. And then often if they don't, the majority of them don't go back on the market immediately.
Correct. And that is a stat. They're gonna net less overall, but the mindset of certain individuals is it's calculatable to say, I'm not paying X to somebody, and in their mind, it's a savings. But a savings off of what? They don't even have an offer yet, and they're calculating, I'm saving 3%. I'm like, of what? Are you listing your house for 400 when it really should have been listed for 450 with an agent, or 460? So that's my conversation with a for sale by owner.
And won't that really start manifesting itself when buyers don't bring their buyer to the table, or maybe in a side conversation, they explicitly tell that seller's agent, I've got a buyer, they're qualified, they want to buy a house, but guess what? You're offering 0%. We're going somewhere else. See you later. I don't know if you get in trouble for doing that, but that's probably going to happen.
No,
and then
that's what that agenda.
and then people will start coming to realize, wow, there is value in this whole system the way it's set up in the past. And
it's a separation of agents. Some aren't even going to pursue that. It's too much work. They don't know how to negotiate. But a for sale by owner doesn't worry me. When a client calls me and says, hey, I just drove by this house, I got a sign in front of it, I'm super interested in it. There's a for sale by owner commission agreement that we negotiate with the offer. It's like, hey, I don't represent you, I represent this guy. Here's our offer, and part of our offer is you're agreeing to pay me X amount, a percentage out of the gross purchase price. Same thing that we've negotiated for sale by owners all the time. They're not offering a commission in most cases, but it's interesting how when you call them and say, hey, are you willing to pay a buyer agency agreement? They'll say, yeah, but that again, back to the thing, they think they're saving whatever it would have cost to have somebody list it and put on the MLS, which is even smaller now because they're paying the other side.
Right.
Or they might say 1%, 2%, 3%, whatever. It's all negotiation. It's interesting. It's just the dialogue's going to change.
Well, I mean, what it might do too. I mean, the other part of the equation is what it does to the buyer's agents and our psychology, right? In that it's going to be a little bit more explicit now. It is going to be discussed more, and it might put you more on the hook to, I've really got to perform for this client, right? We're talking about what I'm doing we're talking about my value, we're talking about why I should be paid. then I gotta step up, right? I mean, I better
Absolutely.
go above, maybe you weren't that, maybe you were a great agent all along, but you're really gonna have to cover every base, make sure that your communications are solid, your follow-ups, and everything that you should be checking in those boxes as a superstar agent, you would then.
So look at it that way, right? It's gonna increase the communication for the consumer. It's gonna create a higher level of transparency in what
Yeah.
we're doing. That's all good for the consumer. It's like, there's just a lot of agents that the ones that are whining about
Right,
this
right.
aren't used to having those
Right,
conversations.
right,
They're
right.
just trying to squeak it in
Well,
there.
and I don't know if it was somebody in this group or I said, maybe Shelley showed it to me on Facebook, but somebody I think in our group posted it, maybe it was on the Limitless page. But it was basically this freaking like 4-page
I've
long
seen
thing of, this is all the stuff that a agent does for you in a transaction.
Mhm.
And you read that and go, oh, there's a lot of stuff there, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not like the list is small, right? So it is, I guess, if you're trying to sell your value.
I would make it more personal than that, though.
Well, I know, I'm just
yeah.
saying that's.
There is a lot of
Yeah,
stuff.
there is a lot of stuff you do, right, that you don't talk about. And that they probably don't even know.
Yeah, yeah, well, you're exactly right. Unless they've done it before, they don't, they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Nathan had put in the chat, he's gonna go meet a cleaning lady. That was probably old. Oh, wow, we've got past one slide. Okay, why don't you look through
This meeting.
Serious?
Actually, you gotta shut him down.
Well, we're running out of time, so we'll just quickly go through, our training from last week was with Dr. Anthony Schuler. It was pretty good about stress overload syndrome. He did a great job explaining like how stress affects us and how it affects your business and everything. Unfortunately, we didn't get to record that one, because he had some things that he wasn't allowed to record what he was saying. So we don't have a recording of that one, but it was pretty awesome. And then next week, we've got Mikkel and Austin Kaiser coming in to talk about why discipline doesn't work. It's a lot about, neuroplasticity, how your brain works and how to like work on your subconscious. It's with a program that my mom and I did, the Fly program. It's going to be a pretty great training. If you guys are going to come, please register because that really helps me know how many people are going to be coming. And then here are our upcoming trainings. So I've got the ones that I have on here that are in May. Those are the ones we're gonna be switching to Thursdays. So I'm just working on the back end of those. I don't have registration pages up just yet for those, but we do have a 2-hour CE course. End of April. Yeah, we got a
Oh,
few
I
from our
love
own
Daniel's
team.
picture.
So I told you.
I was on Zoom with him and I said, dude, you've been bulking up. And he says, actually, I'm cutting right now.
Defines
Yeah.
Okay, well, we are at time, but we've got Kathy that's gonna give us our parting thoughts. And we've got the 109 plan and then a few affirmations. Kathy, what do you want me to put up?
Well, I just sent a bunch of them. What I did, I have 87 pages. I have 87 daily affirmations that Bill Pipe sends out every single day, or his staff or whatever, sends out every day. Last night, I went through all 87 of them since this started November 14th, last year, right after his first G3 Nation seminar that he did in October there in Salt Lake City, actually under his new name, new company name. Anyway, I went through those and I read every single one until like 1 o'clock this morning. And I put stars next to the ones that meant the most to me. You'll see some of them in that packet that I sent you. And yes, I'm not going to talk about all of them because there's a lot. But I put stars next to the ones that, like 4 stars, meant the most to me. You wanted me to talk about, my thoughts on them, and I have different thoughts, but I've been in the business, as y'all know, I've been in the business 30 years and 31 years now. But it's like me starting all over again. And so my business wise, I'm still down lower, like beginner level. But when I look at these affirmations, these are the ones that I think apply mostly to me. And of the 87, there's 3 weeks where I didn't get because for some reason my email got cut off from the system or their system, and so I got that back on now. So I'm missing 3 weeks of affirmations. But anyway, there's still a lot. But there's a lot of them that are for people that are at different levels of their business, you know, a higher level and so forth, that are in that group that I sent, but or in the total group, but I just sent the ones that meant the most to me. And so the one that I'm looking at, one of them is you pulled up those two, but I'm looking at one that's dated January 1st, and it says they all start out with the same first sentence. I'm alive, full of excited and full of energy every single day. Even his seminars start that way as well each day. But this one I put on 4 stars is January 1st, and says I'm focused and determined. I see my future and it lights me up. I am the person today required to make my dreams a reality. I have clarity and purpose. I take the actions today and every day necessary for excellence. Hey, universe, I declare that this year, this time, this moment, I own it. Because it's the first day of the year, of course, I alpha up in 2024 style. So that's kind of how I wanted to start my day off. But this one here, where you've got November 23rd, that's a good one. February 12th. Another one that I wanted to share that's in that package too is this one here. And I'll just read it real quickly. I'm alive, excited, and full of energy. I am part of a powerful community, the G3 Warriors, which is the G3 Nation Warriors that Bill created, supporting and lifting each other up. Together we are unstoppable, achieving greatness through collaboration. We are fierce competitors, yet we celebrate each other's victories. Today and for the rest of the week, I alpha up. But I also like to say this about the Marchant team as well, the Marchant group, because it's not just G3, but if Bill hadn't put me onto Bill Pipes at all, I wouldn't be where I'm at today at all. And also, I think that this helped me in my decision and to stay in the business on January 31st when I renewed my SAR dues, my MLS dues. So there's a lot there to look at. You talked about all the things that we do as buyers agents and realtors and so forth. There's one attachment there that's 41 tasks that an agent does for their clients. That we just got that one a couple of days ago, and it's just if you can share that with anybody, and if there's something else that somebody would like for me to send to them, I can do that too. So it's just, the affirmations are really insightful and very when you get down in the dumps or something like that, where things aren't quite going right, and things haven't gone right for me for a long time. And so I look back on these and just makes me feel so much better and gives me the incentive to want to move on with my business and so forth, and to get better at communication, better being positive instead of being negative. I heard you talk a lot about that guy that Eric was talking about this morning, a little while ago, about so much negativity in his life. And my kids were all wanting me to stop real estate and be retired. Like just stay home and be, I stay home anyway. I do work from home, but for me to do my quilting and so forth. And I want to be able to find a balance to where I can do this and do my quilting as well. Because I haven't quilted in 5 years and I really like to do it. So it's a hobby of mine. So with that, I don't want to take up too much people's time, but if anybody wants to just kind of read through, if you can make copies for everybody, that was my intent, was just to give to share some of those thoughts with everybody.
Yeah, there's a whole PDF of all of these affirmations, and so what I can do is I can share that on the Team Limitless Facebook group. I can share that so that if anyone wants to download them and look through them, there's a ton of information there. So I'll do that.
Just know, that's the ones that I sent were the ones that are at my level where I'm at right now, but I have many more that are for people that are being successful, and the wording is a little bit different for every one of them. And like I said, every day we get one of these in our email. they, you know, his staff emails it out to us. So it's a good thing. And if anybody is interested, I mean, you can still go down to Orlando, to I think it's $269 for a hotel. And, you know, if you make it down there, I mean, I'm sure he would love to have everybody, you know, come down that wants to go. So anyway, that's my thought. That's my promotion for him. But Jeff, I have to thank you mostly because, you know, you're the one that started me on him in April of, I think it was 2021 is when we first did that 12 weeks. That was a virtual class. And then from there, I just kind of latched on to him, and I'm his biggest fan, but he's got some really good people too. Lots of coaches, and it's going to be an all-star cast too. He brings in all kinds of speakers and everything for his seminars. So.
Awesome, Kathy. That's all good stuff. And I love that you've connected so much with Bill. There's a lot of great coaches out there. There's a lot of great instructors, but if you don't resonate maybe with their personality or their message or their style or whatever, you don't get as much out of it. So I love that you've connected with somebody that really motivates you, and keeps you going, in the business. So that's awesome. He's doing a good job.
I thank you guys all too. You know, you, Eric, I've spoken with Eric a few times too, you know, when we've met, or just being here, part of your, you know, your everyday, you know, your twice a week, Zoom classes or whatever you want to call them. I had lots of words there. So, but yeah, I appreciate everything everybody's been doing, just hanging in there.
You're awesome,
Super.
Kathy.
I'm trying to be, to tell my kids that, my adult kids.
These would be great affirmations to, you know, put in our group too.
Yeah, they really are. They really
Yeah.
are. So
Just post
anyway,
them.
so I spent some time on I've read every one of them last night. So I thought I'm gonna put stars next to ones that I like the best for me, but there are still, like I said, many more. You know, since November 14th is when this all started coming out. So okay, that's my
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy. Good
Okay.
stuff.
Okay.
So based on the time, I don't think we'll really go much into attraction. We'll just regroup next week, and hopefully you guys can all attend this Wednesday's training. Should be a good one.
Okay.
Love you guys.
Love you
Go out
too.
and kill it. Have a great day.
See you guys.
Bye.
Thanks.
Talk soon. See ya.